we want to try and tie the loose ends. And then the rest will hopefully complete tomorrow because I'm told this evening I just have one class.
Yeah, I think I'm going to session to pick you on the
Okay, so before we resume, I'd like us to kneel for a silent prayer. Amen. So we are looking at the book of Matthew chapter 24. Though not in detail. We are just going through it we are going through it in an attempt to understand the message that we are going to look at. So what then we did is we said we'll go to Matthew 24 but we will not get to the details. So like this will help us establish a structure, the structure which we'll use to make a point. So that is what like we have been trying to do. So now if we go to the book of Matthew chapter 24, there is a structure it establishes. There is a structure that it establishes that is important to our study. So this is the structure that we have come up with from Matthew chapter 24. So how we establish that structure is by first establishing that in Matthew chapter 24 verse 3 we have 4 questions. So by this point it's my belief that every one of us is comfortable with the idea that we have the 4 questions in verse 3 of Matthew chapter 24. So now I see there are these friends who have like joined us now. So I give that job to Ebenezer or Mutuma. So after this, they'll just take you through what we have been looking at. Because like we don't have like a lot of time that we can like repeat the whole thing. We have used like 6 classes to go through this. So we said when we come to 3a, 4a, and 7a, that forms the first questions in Matthew chapter 24. 4b and 7b forms the second question. So 3c forms the third question and 3d forms the fourth question. So we have 4 questions in that verse. And we said the 2 questions, the first and the second question, they are speaking in relation to the destruction of the temple. And then the last 2 questions, 3c and 3d, are speaking in relation to the end of the world. So we said when now Christ comes to verse 4 of Matthew chapter 24, so he'll then begin to answer the questions of the disciples.
gaaffii bartootaa barsiisuu jalqaba jechaadha lakkoofsa.
And they'll answer the question in accordance to the chronology that they have asked these questions.
Gaaffiiwwan kana akkaataa tartiiba isaaniitti gaafatamaniin kan inni deebisuu itti fufu.
So from verse 4 to verse 20 he is dealing with the first two questions in relation to the destruction of the temple.
Lakkoofsa 4 amma lakkoofsa 20 keessatti gaaffiiwwan lamaan jalqabaadha kan inni deebise.
Verse 21 to verse 28 introduces the great tribulations, those days.
Gaaffii lakkoofsa 21 amma lakkoofsa 28tti immoo yeroo gadiraa isa guddaa sana ilaalchisee waan inni dubbateera.
So that is speaking to the 1260 years.
Waa'ee waggaa 1260.
So verse 29 to verse 31 now you endeavor to answer the last two questions.
Lakkoofsa 29 amma lakkoofsa 31tti immoo gaaffiiwwan lamaan warra xumuraa sana
deebise. So you'll be answering a question in relation to the coming of the Son of Man.
Waa'ee dhufaatii ilma namaatiif.
And then he'll be answering a question in relation to the end of the world.
Ashimo xumuraa addunyaatti kan inni deebisee jechuudha.
So we say therefore this period is the end of the world from 1798 to the second advent. So we said we will not be focusing on this history and this history. We want to take this history and focus on it. So we went to another prophecy. And this is the book of Daniel chapter 11 verse 40 to 45. And the reason why we had to go there is because we read a quotation from Great Controversy page 594. So this quotation is doing a compare and contrast of the history of the disciples and the history at the end of the world. So it shows us that in the history of the disciples, Christ revealed the events connected with the cross, their cross of probation. But because the disciples had a misunderstanding of Christ's kingdom, they were not able to understand. So they missed this event, they are disappointed. Then what will compare and contrast this with the end of the world? So now we understand our close of probation is Daniel chapter 12 verse 1. So we therefore say the events connected with the close of probation, we can find them in the book of Daniel chapter 11 40 to 45. So but Ellen White told us we need to understand both the events connected with the close of probation
Ellen White
and the work of preparation. So now we went to the history of Christ. And when Christ is answering two questions in relation to the destruction of the temple, he'll give them a sign that is going to show them that their close of probation will come. 70 AD is coming. And we saw that once Christ had given them a sign in verse 15 of Matthew chapter 24, there is a work of preparation that they should be doing alongside that. So verse 16 will tell you, once they have seen the sign in verse 15, so in verse 16, the work of preparation that they are expected to do is that those who are in Judea, they are supposed to flee to the mountains. And those who are within the city of Judea should leave. So we give an example of one man who was preaching in 7 years in relation to the destruction of Jerusalem.
diigamuu Yerusaalemiitti wal qabatee namichi tokko waggaa 7 kan lallabaa ture jira ture.
And we said this man understands the events connected with the close of probation.
Namichi kuni taateewwan cufamuu balbala araaraa wajjin wal qabatan hubatee ture.
So but the work that he didn't carry the work of preparation.
Garuu hojii qophaa'ummaan hojjennu isaatiif.
So we said therefore when we come to our timeline,
yeroo gara toora keenyaatti dhufnu,
we are given signs, events connected with the close of probation.
Nuuf milikkitoonni taateewwan cufamuu balbala araaraa wajjin wal qabatan.
But alongside that, what we must carry is the work of preparation.
Taateewwan sana beekuu wajjin hojii qophaa'ummaas hojjechuu qabna.
So then we came to this history,
gara seenaa kanaatti dhufne,
and we wanted to think about this history and understand the sign.
Seenaa kana keessatti mallattoota sana yookaan milikkitoota sana,
the sign that the Son of Man is coming,
milikkita dhufaatii ilma namaa,
and the end of the world is coming.
akkasumas xumurri addunyaa akka dhufaa jiru.
So once we see those signs,
milikkitoota sana erga argine booda,
the effect will be on the work of preparation.
Bu'aan isaa yookaan iji isaa hojii qophaa'ummaati.
Because now we must prepare for the event.
Taatee sanaaf qophaa'uu qabna waan ta'eef.
Okay, so now what we have on this wall is now we are trying to understand the events, the questions, all the verses that have that are answering the last two questions.
Gaafiiwwan lamaan warra xumuraa gaafii afran sana keessa gaafiiwwan lamaan warra xumuraa warra deebisanidha wanti nu asirratti agarsiisne.
So and how we wanted to understand that
akkaataan nuti sana hubachuu barbaanne
is by comparing and contrasting these three with other gospels in the Bible.
Maatiyos boqonnaa 24tti wangeelotaa fi mul'ata Yohaanisiin itti daballee isaanii wajjin wal bira qabnee waliin madaallee.
So when we go to the book of Matthew chapter 24,
Maatiyos boqonnaa 24 irratti
we divided it to 4 sections.
lakkoofsa 29 fi 30 du'a afuritti irratti.
29a, the sign that it was giving us is the sun, the moon, and the stars.
lakkoofsa 29 kutaan tokkoffaan isaa aduu, ji'aa fi urjoota nuuf kenna.
So we got that is available in Mark chapter 13 verse 24.
Marqos 13 lakkoofsa 24 irrattis waan sanatu jira.
And it's speaking to the sun and the moon.
Aduudhaaf ji'a duwwaadha kan inni irratti kaa'u.
So Mark doesn't have the stars.
Marqos keessa urjoonni hin jiran.
So we came to the book of Luke chapter 21.
gara Luqaas 21 gaafa dhufnu,
So we saw the sun, the moon, and the stars.
aduu, ji'is, urjoonnis jiru.
But Luke adds one thing, which is the distress of nations.
Odeeffannoo dabalataatti kenna dhiphina uummataa kan jiru.
So we compared that to the book of Revelation chapter 6.
Isa kana mul'ata boqonnaa 6 wajjin wal bira qabne.
So it has the sun and the moon,
Aduuf ji'i jira.
but it adds a new thing, which is the earthquake.
Odeeffannoo dabalataa kennan immoo sochii lafaa.
So when we come to the second section of that prophecy,
kutaa lammaffaa lakkoofsa 29 gaafa laallu,
we saw the shaking of the powers of heaven.
humnoonni waaqaa siin hollatu kan jedhu argina.
Mark has that it combines the falling of the stars with the shaking of the powers of heaven.
Marqos immoo harca'uu urjoota humnoota waaqaa hollachuu wajjiniin walitti dabale.
Now we remember the reason we gave for that.
Sababii nuyi sanaaf kennine yaadattu miti.
We all remember.
Maaliif walitti dabale? Urjoota harca'uudhaa fi humnoonni waaqaa hollachuu yookaan raafamuu maaliif walitti dabale jennuuti keessanii yaadattu?
So we said that is cause and effect.
Sababii fi bu'aadhaan ni jennu.
Because Mark knows once the power of heaven shake,
al tokko humni waaqaa yeroo humnoonni samii gaafa raafaman,
the stars will fall.
urjoonni ni harca'u.
So that is why we have that combination.
Kanaaf sana walitti dabalame jechuudha.
So when we came to Luke,
Gara Luqaas gaafa dhufnu,
we saw that there is we have many heart failing,
garaan namootaas hin sodaata kan
and that is connected with the shaking of the powers of heaven.
inni kunis raafamuu humnoota samii wajjiniin wal qabata.
So we discussed this, and this is this. We remember
Inni kuni kana wajjiniin wal qabsiisneeti.
what we have in Luke is what we came and we had broken down here.
Lukas keessattuu waan argine sana caccabsine akkasittiin ilaalle.
So if you go to Luke chapter 25, the first part,
Lukas boqonnaa 21 lakkoofsa 25.
You see the sun, the moon, and the stars.
Aduun jira, ji'a jira, urjoonni jiru.
So we said those are powers of heaven.
Isaan humnoota samiiti.
If you come to the book of Luke chapter 25b, we have the distance of nations that is happening on earth. So if we move to 26a, we are having the man's heart failing on earth. And then we are having Christ coming in the clouds, which is the powers of heaven. So we said these are chiasm. So what we have is 25A, 25B, 26A, 26B. So 25A will give us heaven. 25B will give us earth. 26A will give us earth. 26B will give us heaven. Heaven, earth, heaven, a prophetic mirror. So what we then started doing, we went and compared these events and wanted to form a line. So we went to these individual signs and we wanted to understand when they happened. Okay, so we went to these individual events and we wanted to understand when these individual events will happen. So we said the earthquake. Which year does the earthquake happen? Okay, which earthquake is this? Oh, you are not there? Right. So which earthquake is this? No, him. So which earthquake is that?
Lisbon.
So that is the Lisbon earthquake. So we said it happens in 1755. So next we moved with the sun and moon. And we saw that happens in 1780. So we gave a specific reason why the sun and moon had to happen at the same day. So what do you think in red? Which is the reason we gave why they had to happen the same day? Sorry? So what is that specific reason that we gave? You remember I'm speaking to him.
Okay, he was not there.
Oh, he was not there.
Yeah.
Right, so the neighbor assist.
This is cause and effect.
It's cause and effect. Because we say what we have in relation to the sun, they say the sun darkened and then the moon had no light. So we ask ourselves a question. Where does the moon get her light from? From the sun. So if the sun has darkened, what is the effect? The moon does not give light. So we knew that those events must happen at the same time. Cause and effect. Does that make sense? So we then moved to the next event, which was the stars. So we said that happens in 1833. So the only question therefore we have not answered in this first part of the prophecy is the distress of nations. So we did a lot of work and concluded that the distress of nations happened in 11th August 1840. Now I know there is a quotation that you people are supposed to give. So that is where like we are supposed to pick up from. I think mine was to give the date and yours was to give the quotation that speaks to that. Right? So anyone? Okay, let's go there. I think that is correct. Great Controversy, page 334. To 335. Right. So in the year 1840, another remarkable fulfillment of prophecy excited widespread interest.
Bara saddeet afurtama keessatti raawwiin raajii tokko fedhii guddaa uume ture.
2 years before, Josiah Leach, one of the leading ministers, preaching the second advent,
isaan dura waggaa lama dursee tajaajilaan Josiah Leach jedhamu tokko waa'ee dhufaatii Kiristoosiin lallabaa ture.
Published an exposition of Revelation 9.
Ibsa mul'ata boqonnaa 9 maxxansee ture.
Predicting the fall of the Ottoman Empire. According to his calculations, this power was to be overthrown in 1840. Sometime in the month of August. And only a few days previous to this, to its accomplishment, he wrote, allowing the first period 150 years to have been exactly fulfilled. Before the causes ascended the throne by permission of the tax and that of the 391 years 15 days.
Which paragraph are you reading?
I don't know. I think
I have to look at it because you are reading along the sentence.
Okay. All right. So we are here.
Yeah.
I just skipped.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead. I'm reading the first period, 150 years.
To have been exactly before the causes ascended the throne by permission of the tax, and that of the 391 years 15 days commenced at the close of the first period. It will end on the 11th of August 1840. when the Ottoman Empire in Constantinople may be expected to be broken?
Gara aangotti dhufuu kaasee waggoota 150 erga sanaaf kaa'ee booda their causes, what are their causes?
Just tell them the way it is. I don't know. It's
their causes ascended
because there is a person
of Turkish.
Yeah, there is a person.
Eyyama warra Turkiitini, their causes gara aangotti dhufe, and that day 391 years, 50 days commenced at the close of the first period. Guyyaa 390 waggoota 390 tokkoo fi guyyoota 15 inni mul'ata sagalatti fakkaatu keessatti jedhu suni yeroo sana jalqabeera. It will end on the 11th of August 1840. Yeroo sana jalqabee hagayya 11 irratti xumuramaa kan jedhu dubbate jechuudha. Yeroo sanatti when the Ottoman power in Constantinople may be expected to be broken. Umni Ottoman in Constantinople magaalaa isaaniiti. Constantinople keessa jiru yeroo sanatti cabaa dubbate jechuudha Josiah jechuudha.
So the next sentence says,
himinni taanu
at the very time specified, Turkey, through her ambassadors, accepted the protection of the allied powers of Europe and thus placed himself under the control of Christian nations.
Yeroodhuma jedhame sanatti Turkiin karaa ambaasaadara isheetii jechuudha eegumsa yookaan kunuunsa eegumsa akka godhamuufi humnoota gamtooman humnoota Awurooppaa jala of galchite humna kiristaanaa yookaan biyyoota kiristaanaa jala of galchite jedha.
So in other words,
jecha biraadhaan
this prophecy fulfills the prediction that they had made before.
Raajiin kuni isa duraan dursee dubbatame yookaan raagame sana.
But the only point I wanted us to see, without going to details,
gadi fageenyaan keessattuu seenini qabxiin asirratti akka ilaallu barbaadu
is that we have the allied powers of Europe.
Humnoonni Europe, humnoonni gamtooman turaniiru.
What does allied mean?
Humnoota walitti dhufan humnoota gamtooman jechuun maal jechuudha?
What does the word allied mean? Unite. Coming together. So that is bringing this idea that we got from the definition of what distress is.
Distress you can biyyoota kan jedhu keessatti hiikaasaa gaafa ilaallu isa sana nuuf fidaa jechuudha isa sana nuuf kennu.
So we saw it means hold together, restraining or binding together.
Walitti qabu, ittisuu yookaan dura'uu waan akkasii hiikaa kana nuuf kenna.
So the allied voices of Europe,
humnoonni gamtooman humnoonni Awurooppaa,
they come together in 11th August 1840
walitti dhufanii hagayya 1840 irratti
to restrain Islam.
Islaama ittisuudhaaf jechuudha kan isaan walitti dhufan.
And in this context it was Egypt and Syria.
As keessatti galma kana keessatti Misrii fi Siiriyaadha jechuudha.
So then we marked the distress of nations in 11th August 1840.
Kanaaf dhiphina biyyootaa yookaan sabootaa kan jedhu 1840 irratti jechuudha.
So I asked us to go and name out which are these European countries. We remember?
Biyyoonni gamtooman suni warra kamidha biyyoota Awurooppaa warra kamidha jedhee si gaafadheen ture. Yaadatu.
Did we find out?
Argataniitu biyyoota kam akka ta'an.
All right. So what are these European nations that are allied?
Warra kamidha.
Sena siyaaki Ismail Dande Sakondo Gamton.
No, maqaan isaanii jira maqaan isaanii biyya I think biyya Awurooppaa keessa biyya I think Britain, Austria, Britain.
Okay, that is fair.
Russia.
So Austria, Russia, Britain,
France, Russia.
There is no France.
France, no France. Russia.
Okay. So we can go and look to that. I think France is there.
France is just the network.
So now we said, when we look at this way, Mark,
Yeroo mallattoo daandii kana ilaallu
is it related with this waymark?
mallattoo daandii isa kana wajjiniin wal qabata. 1847 jechuudha.
So we said if you go to the internal history,
yoo seenaa isa keessaa ilaalle
the first angel arrives here.
ergaan ergamaa tokkoffaa kan inni itti dhufe
The first angel is empowered here.
kan inni itti humnaa yookaan humna godhate immoo 1847.
So these two waymarks are related by the fact that the internal history, first angel connects them.
karaa isa keessaatiin ergamaa tokkoffaa sababii sanaaf wal qabatu jechuudha mallattoon daandii lamaan.
And we said in the external history, we can see the relation between the two. These powers we see here, we go back to 1798, we can see the same powers. Here it's in the context of the fight between the king of the north versus the king of the south. So I'm saying you could have needed to have understood what the Millerite understanding of 1140 was to understand this. So in the event that we don't understand, then I'll do it. But I want to believe that is a history. We can go to Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith. And if we go to Daniel and Revelation by Uriah Smith, we can find that history there. So that is where we go to in the morning. So now, before we come to the second part of this prophecy, I'll need us to go back to the book of Matthew chapter 24. So we go to verse 30. Right? So if we go to verse 30, we said which event is verse 30? It's the second advent. Okay, so when we come to verse 31, which event is verse 31? Sorry?
The end of the world.
It's the end of the world, the second advent still. So then we said, what is the difference between the sign in verse 30 and the sign in verse 31? I remember we like took a few moments to discuss that. You remember? So what is the difference between them, or what is the relation between them?
ilmi namaa immoo duumessoota waaqarraa humnaa fi ulfina guddaadhaan dhufuu isaa arguuf jiru lakkoofsa 31 inni ergamoota isaa waaqarraa sagalee malakaa guddaa wajjin inni erga isaan immoo warra waaqayyoof fo'aman qixa arfanii handaara bantii waaqaa gar tokko amma gara isa kaanittis walitti hin qabu jedha. Kanaaf milikitii inni lakkoofsa 30 jiruu fi milikitii inni lakkoofsa 30 tokkorra jiru kana mansaa wal fakkaattiinsaa maalidhaa kan jiru ganama ilaalee turre.
Milikita gooftaan jiruu fi gooftaan
the sign before Christ's advent and the sign after Christ.
So the sign in verse 30 is telling you when this happens, Christ is going to come. But the sign in verse 31, it says, when this happens, Christ has come.
Nila ko sa sodomi to korajur mo yero melekiti kun tabu Kristus malina dofera ju.
So do you get that difference?
Sene gale gara mansa.
All right. So now I want us to get. I'm looking for a specific person. I want us to go to verse 32. Then we'll come back to that second section.
Gara la ko sa sodomi lama anne sakana tedegna.
So I want us to go to verse 32 of that of that prophecy.
Raji kana kesati gara la ko sa sodomi.
So just hold on. We are going to go back to the second part that we have not handled.
Kutala mafaza isa nilalini nilala amafi no sitani.
So this is the complete prophecy of Matthew chapter 24.
Only Raji Matthew book 9
We said it starts from verse 1, it ends in verse 31.
La cosa to corretti del cabello, la cosa sodomi to corretti to muram.
So now, like, I'm looking for someone.
Nama.
Because, okay, yeah, it's high in white. Can't remember her name.
Magic.
Yes, so I need us to go to verse 32. This partly because yesterday she spoke the point I wanted.
La cosa sodomi la marra wanjiru kalesel betul tekatian barbaru.
So now, if we go to verse 32,
Anu karbu gara la cosa sodomi la maga euroletani.
it starts by now learn a parable.
Fakkinya toko tu jelas.
Okay, so in other words,
Jecha beradani.
now Christ is going to give another parable
Kristus fakkinya berakenna.
to illustrate this prophecy.
Raji makana ibsuda.
So now we already know these things. When we speak about a parable,
Why fakkinya gafa azonu.
is where you take a natural symbol
Wan umama kurane.
to illustrate the spiritual.
Wan afura kan itibsinu.
We are already comfortable with that idea.
Kana sereti benyales kana joli kana benda.
So in verse 32, Christ is going to introduce a parable.
La cosa domi la makesati Kristus fakkinya toko rojal kawa.
So and I'm saying now when it comes to verse 32, he's doing repeat and enlarge. Now he's going to give a parable to illustrate this prophecy.
La cosa domi la marrati irrade beni bal isu kanin donje tumare ki rajima askese jiru kana rade biye ipsawante.
Okay, so if we go to the parable in verse 32,
fakkinya la cosa domi la marra gafadannu
what will be the natural?
innu mama mari panti mama tara the fig tree.
Okay, the fig tree.
Mukarabu.
So Christ is going to use the symbology of the fig tree
Fakkinya muka arbu fayyadama Kristus.
to illustrate what is the spiritual.
Mali danya pura samu.
Sama Yudot.
The Jewish people.
Okay, that is not a fair question, so I'll rephrase again.
Gafin sa stinin resame.
So we've agreed all up to this point. I think we understand that Matthew chapter 24 from verse 1 to 29 is this history that we have covered here.
Matthews bukan demi toko la ko demi afur la ko to ko amma so demi toko la kanjiru sena kana la kana mayon tilande.
All of us agree with that.
Sena kana utinin waligal amma.
So when we come to verse 32, is repeating and enlarging this history that we have laid out.
La ko so demi la marraga pada ko sena makana irrade be ibs.
But if we come to this history that we have laid out,
Gar sena kana yorutani.
how many sections do we have in this history, Mtuma?
Kutawan meka kaba sena kun. Meka kaba.
Okay, 2, that is fair. How many sections? 3 sections.
Kuta sadi kaba.
We have the first section, which is the history of the disciples.
Sena pertuta jira kuta to.
Then we have this tribulation, the 12:16. Even you are the one who gave us.
Jaro gidra barak moto ko de bala ma.
And then from 1798 we have the end of the world. So now if we come back to Matthew chapter 32, is Christ so there are 3 truths. There are four sections. In fact, we can get from this history. So I'm saying this, the one of the disciples with the first one. The Great Tribulation will be the second section. The end of the world will be the third section. And we can take the whole history, which will be the fourth section. Like the last one is the one if we go from the history of the Christ to the second advent.
Inni kun seenaa bara Kiristoos hagaan bartootaa kaasee amma dhufaatii lammaffaatti.
So now, if we look it that way,
Yoo gara sana ilaalle
it will give us 4 sections.
kutaa afur nuuf kenna. Maakkarees laa.
Let me just use black. So that is okay. Let me just use black.
Okay.
And then I have it already. So it will give us 4 sections.
Kutaa afur nuuf kenna jechuudha.
Now, my question is,
Gaaffiin koo
so when we come to verse 32,
gara gaaffii lakkoofsa 22 gaafa dhufnu
the parable that Christ now gives in verse 32,
fakkeenyi Kiristoos lakkoofsa 22 irratti kaasaa jiru.
what is he repeating and enlarging on specifically? Is he repeating on the first, the second, the third, or the fourth?
Isa kamiin irra deebi'ee ibsee bal'isaa jira. Isa tokkoffaadha moo isa lammaffaadha moo isa sadaffaadha moo isa afuraffaadha?
So I think now that is a fair question because it gives some sense of direction.
Amma kallattii isinii kenname waan ta'eef.
So now back to her. Yesterday you took us to verse 32.
Kaleessa situ lakkoofsa sana tumfile waan ta'eef. Let me think about it.
But she defended us passionately yesterday. All right, that is okay. We'll come back to you. So Ebenezer, if you go to verse 32, we are seeing it's a repeat and the last. That parable is expounding on what Christ had already given, this history. Alright, the reason why I'm going there because I want to take us that history, we are going to relate to the history we have behind here. So it will help us open up the line we've already built. It's not some foot and work we are doing, it's some helpful exercise.
I think it is the first history.
So it's only expanding the history of the disciples. Right. So I think we do what we did yesterday. So Ebenezer. Right. So Ebenezer thinks 32, the parable we have, is going to repeat and enlarge on Roman 1. So this history alone. So we'll come back and ask for the reasons. Alright?
Do a forward.
It's going to expand on the third one, alright? What was the name?
Galatians.
Third history, alright? From? It's not expanding on anything. No, do you agree that 32 now Christ is going to give that a parable to illustrate this history?
Yeah, definitely I agree.
So which history then is he? So which history then is he expanding on?
One.
Okay. So, Fraul, you carry the same cross as Ebenezer. So we'll come back to you to tell us why. Okay. So, so you carry the cross with her. Sorry? So that is 4. Only is just skipping the second one. Okay. What was the name? David. Alright. Is that fair? Do we have another opinion?
The whole history. That one is 4.
What is her name?
I give Louis.
And for all has changed his mind.
Remove my name from the first one.
So where are you?
He's changed his mind
He's together with me now. He's changed.
No, so where has he gone?
4.
Number 1, 2, 3. Illustrate the 4.
So you are with her.
Yeah.
Alright.
No. I mean, 1, 2, 3. Illustrate the fourth one.
So this is the first one.
Yeah, first.
This is the second one.
Yeah, third.
This is the third one.
Yeah. All of them is illustrate the fourth illustrate.
So you are here.
Yeah.
So the repeated that Christ is doing is just speaking to this is which is for from here to here.
Yeah.
Alright, so then you are with her. Okay? So now we go back to Ebenezer. Why the first history?
Okay. I just say it is the first history because of, you know, in the 34 when we read, verily I saw unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. I read those things because
So where are these things?
these things on he mentioned the parable. I think.
Alright, so which are, namely? Namely?
The fig tree
Okay, so he compares the fig tree to what?
with the first history.
No, it doesn't. Let's go to verse 32. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So he'll give us some characteristics about the fig tree. So and he tells us when you see those characteristics, you know that summer is nigh. So what is summer? When summer is nigh, what does that mean?
Harvest.
I think she has an idea. Harvest. So when you know, when you see summer, it's associated with harvest. So the fig tree is teaching us something about the harvest. So which harvest is this? Alright, it's okay. Alright, so we come to, so you've not told us why you think specifically to look at the first history.
Yeah, because when you answer, I'm just confusing. That's why.
Okay, so we'll come to you when you are not confused. So who is this? Who is the first one? So no, we'll come to it was okay. We'll come to okay. Mtuma, you can go. So what do you think is speaking to this history? That is what is repeating and enlarging.
When it says the end is nigh or the end is near, it has a content of 1798. He's saying from 1798 to the end of the world, or that
The end is
the
nigh.
second AD. It is about harvest. That means it is about the end of the world.
Okay, that is okay. So now, if you go to verse 34, Mtuma. Verse 34. Okay, so it says, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. So which generation is that? So who is Christ speaking? Who is Christ speaking to? No, that seems like a big explanation. So I need to us to walk step to step. So who is Christ speaking to? Who is the target audience at that time? He's talking to the disciples. So we agree with that. So these words primarily Christ is speaking to the disciples in that one AD. So this generation shall not pass until all these things are fulfilled. Who is he speaking to?
He's talking to the disciples, but the application is to those who are there.
No, so before we apply first, the words must be fulfilled. I mean, like the past. See, that is what we are doing. So before we apply, those words must be fulfilled in the time of the disciples.
So application is that
So you agree that this generation is referring to the. I'm not even saying that is correct, but do you agree that this generation is speaking to the disciples? So which history is that? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
1.
1. All right. So the end of near, which history is that? If we are speaking the end is near, means the end of the world. What history will be that? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
Same thing.
So
is saying he's talking about the disciples, except we are talking about the.
All right. So okay.
Akka yaadutti waa xiqqoo garuu jechuudha. Fakkeenyaaf iddoon kun kan inni dubbachaa jiru yeroo bartoonni hundeeffamanii ergamaan lammaffaa humna godhatanii ture akkatti yaada. Fakkeenyaaf dameen muka harbuu fakkeenyaaf iddoo sana gaafa dubbisu fakkeenya godhadhaarraa baraa ceema. Fakkeenyaaf wanti fakkeenya ta'u suni adda bahee beekameera jechuudha. Adda bahee sana booda dameen isaa quuqee baala yommuu baafatu suni booda immoo bonna akka dhiyaatu dubbattu. Kanaaf wanta jechuu barbaade xumura addunyaa ibsaa jira isaanitti himaa jiraan jedha. Maaliif yoo inni jedhee bartoonni adeemsa hedduu darbaniitu dhufanii barnoota kana barachaa jiru jechuudha. Maaliif yoo inni jedhee forbisii darbaniiru 27 edis darbaniiru dhufanii amma waa'ee xumura baraa bira jiru. Amma iddoon kun akeekkachiisa bartootaaf kennamaa jiru. Garuu dhimmi isaa immoo isa kana hundumarraatii baraa gaafa jedhu dhumni dhiyaate gaafa jedhu immoo guutummaa addunyaa xumuramuu isaa ta'ee abdadha.
She's saying the disciples are past the history of 4 AD to 7 AD, and now they are at the end of mission of Christ, and therefore he's talking about the end of world history.
No, every other prophecy they were at the end of Christ. They were in 31 AD. Is this the beginning or the end? So there is no point they have been at the beginning of Christ's mission or Christ's life.
Yeah, they are. She said they are at the end.
Okay, so then they were at the end and they spoke all this history from verse 4 to 21.
What she's referring to is when he says all these things, he was referring to all the history they have passed through.
Alright, so all these things, and what is the answer by the way? I thought it's here. So the answer she has given them should defend this. So what is she defending now? What is she repeating and enlarging? 1 or 3? Alright, okay. So 1 or 3? But you just defended 1. So give us okay, we are coming back. Give us a reason why 3 then. Alright.
Can I establish mine?
Okay.
Okay. When we read the Desire of Age, chapter 64.
No, Matthew 29. Have you? I mean, like, I want us to see that from Matthew 20.
Yeah, I just get a quotation from the spirit of prophecy. Say it is a direct connection with the destruction of Jerusalem.
Okay, read that.
Okay, let me read it.
What is the quote?
Desire of Age 584 is paragraph 2.
So, what is the topic?
The topic is a doomed people, I think.
Sorry?
A doomed people. Let me check it. A doomed people, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it say that.
So, that is this.
Yeah.
Okay.
The parable of the fig tree spoken before the Christ's visit to the Jerusalem had a direct connection with the lesson he taught in a cursing of the fruitless tree. And then after that, he talking more about how the Jerusalem and the Jewish people distract.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So, it's okay. I agree with you.
okay.
All right. So, where does that parable start? The parable of the fig tree.
Is 32, I think.
So, where does that parable end?
On 32.
It starts and ends on, okay, verse 33.
So likewise, yeah.
What does that mean?
That means that it's the same.
It's still on the parable.
Yeah.
So it cannot end in verse 32.
Okay.
So where does it end? And in fact, for you, your defense was verse 34. So what are you doing in verse 34 to show us this generation?
Yeah, he just maybe repeat and enlarge.
David. 1 and 3. Why?
Seenaanii fakkeenyi maatiiwwan boqonnaa deemuun koositanii soddomii lamaadha. Seenaa bartootaa ibsaa darbee immoo seenaa xumuraa ibsa waan jedheefi kallattii maa yeroo sana Yesuus waa'ee dhaloota isaa dubbataa jira. Waa'ee gaaffii lamaan duraa kan inni dubbatamaa tureera. Inni itti aanu dubbatameera. Gaafatanii jechuudha. Gaaffii lamaanis. Kanaaf iyyuu deebi'ama. Bunni akka ga'een beeku yeroo baallii bu'uu kuni yeroon hamaa yeroon makaraa kan ga'e. Yeroo makaraatu ga'e jechuun yeroo makaraa ammas keessaa bara bartootaatii fi bara keenya jiru. Laayinii kiristoosii fi laayinii kumaatawwan bara kooftoon afurii yeroo makaraa. Kanaaf isaatii makaratti waan dhiyaatu waan fakkaateef isaan sana dhuma isaanii isaa
Yeah, the fig tree shows
That almost sounded through so lengthy.
He said history of the fig tree shows the history of harvest, and harvest takes place during the history of the disciples as well as of that 144,000. That's why.
So what is the
harvest takes place here and here?
So what is the harvest here?
Okay, makaruu lafa jiru. Toora laayinii bara kiristoosiin akka gaafa laallu laayinii milkaa'inaati yookaan toora milkaa'inaati. Toora milkaa'inaati gaafa jennu wangeelli guutummaa addunyaatti maal ta'eera lallabameera. Kanaafuu yeroo sana bara dhibba irratti Yesuus maal ta'inne sagalii kaamiin jedhamee laayinii kiristoos irratti agarsiisni jira jechuudha. Milkaa'ina waan ta'eef.
Eenyutu hamameedha. He is saying that the Christ's line is a line of success, and the second advent took
So that is okay. What is the harvest? I know it's a line of success. So what is the harvest in there?
Kan haamame eenyudha? Bartootatu haamame moo addunyaatu haamame moo eenyutu haamame? Eenyu sassaabame? The Jewish people were.
Okay, so that is okay. So we have harvest there, harvest here. So he's just speaking about 1 and 3. So where do you think that parable starts and where does it end?
Yes, at the tomorrow. Are you talking about the verse? You're asking
Yeah, the verse where the prophecy starts and the verse where the prophecy ends. The parable. By prophecy, I mean parable. So we are clear. It starts. Let me help you. It starts in verse 32. Do you agree with that?
Okay. Yeah.
You agree it starts in verse 32. So now the easier work is finding where it ends. So I've done 50% of the assignment for you. So 35, heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. So that is an answer to what he has said in verse 34. So in verse 36, he says, but. So what does that, when do you use but?
When you are trying to speak something opposite.
Opposite to what you have said. So Christ is still speaking the parable. In verse 36 is the same story. A parable is a prophecy, is a story. So if I'm telling you story, I tell you, okay, but, so meaning I'm continuing the story. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. So which event is verse 36? No, which event is that? Which day is that being referenced? Second Advent.
Yeah.
So is that in relation to your answer?
Yes.
Okay. So then, in fact, if I help you to defend your answer, verse 36 still needs to speak to the same parable. So what is the end of that parable? It must have ended at some point, right?
So do it again.
Maybe 39.
Okay, so if it's 39, so if you go to 38, for as in the days that were before the flood. So what are the days of the flood? So if we compare this parable that is starting in verse 32, we compare it with this parable that is from verse 1 to verse 31. What will be the equivalent of what will you call for us in the days that were before the flood? So what are the days of the flood? If we compare that with the previous parable.
The parable in verse 32.
No. The parable in verse 32 is the same, and according to you, it goes to verse 39. That is the same parable, right? So we only have two parables here. We have one parable starting in verse 1 and then in verse 31. So another parable starts in verse 32 and ends somewhere. According to you, ends in verse 39. So if we make them two parables, then we start comparing and contrasting them as we did with these others.
So
I'm saying if you go to verse 38 of your parable, yours, not mine, your parable. We have the days that were before the flood. So what will you compare with in the previous parable, which is verse 1 to 31? So what are the days of the flood?
Yaanni gamba isaa sun maalidha?
Bara nuyi ture akkuma bara nuyi ture bara dhufuun mana maatiin taa'an jiru fi bara inni bara nuyi turis fakkeenya sagalee isaadha jechuun addunyaa isaa.
He says, as it was in the days of Noah, so it would be the day of the Son of Man, the Son of Man. And therefore, it's talking about the coming of the Son of Man.
So we can go to, okay, let me take you to the previous parable. We are finishing, I know we are tired. Let me take you to the previous parable. So if you go to the previous parable, I will take you to verse 22. Yeah, verse 22. So we have those days that are shortened for the elect's sake. Alright, you see that?
Yes.
Alright, so we said that is the same parable that ends in verse 28. So what are those days in that parable, in verse 21? Those are the 1260. Okay, now, if we come to the days of the flood, so now we know literally the days of the flood, he'll compare them to the days of Noah. So he's making an application. What Christ is doing, Christ is making an application in verse 38. He's going to the days of Noah and making an application to the time he's standing. So those can't be literal floods because he'll apply to his time. Then when we come to the end of the world, we'll again apply. That is what we looked yesterday during the question and answers. That which had been, it what is now, and then put there had been and is now tell you about the shall be, the future. So Christ is going to the history of Noah, past history, in an attempt to make them understand the history where he is. So in the application, what will be the days of the flood? Do you get like what I'm explaining?
According to the explanation, he's talking about the disciples' history.
Okay, all right. So I don't know. So then, are you convinced that we are speaking about the first and the third? You are still convinced we are speaking about the first and the third? All right. Okay. So that is Frau. Who is next to Frau? Ha. Okay. Dr. Kedira, tell her to just give me a minute before she answers.
Okay.
Where does the parable end? We know it starts in verse 32. So where is the end of that parable? 32 is the beginning of the parable. Do you agree? Where does it end? 34? Okay. So 34 it says, verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. So which generation is that? Is it this or this?
Okay, she's saying both, all. Okay, she has justification.
Akkamitti jedha tokkoffaa fakkiin hin dadhabedha barnoo bakka irratti namti inni bakka biyya dubbisuun isaaniitti bakka dubbisuun yeroo sanatti dubbate seenaa bakka maanguddisa dinagdaa dubbisuun immoo seenaa gargar dubbachuu jalqabee afaan fakkeenyaatiin malee dubbanne. Gaafa sana jalqabeetti amma irratti fakkeenyaan dubbataa jira jechuudha. Nuuf barsiisa yoo jennee nuti seenaan jiraata. Isaaniif dubbanne jechuun dhageeffatu. Fakkeenyatiin isaaniif waan ittiin ibsuu hin dandeenye. Kanaafuu fakkeenyaa gargar dubbachuu jalqabee akka biraatti dubbanne waan ta'eef suulicha seenaa. Soddoma irratti immoo utuu mana simeetii wanti nuti mara barnoota dhaluun seenaa hin darbu jedhu waan kana keessatti adeemsifatin. Fakkiincha gaafa dubbatu seenaa bakka karaa dhaabatee fakkiin kun amma xumuramutti dhaloonni bartootaa kun hin darbu waan shaakii kan miidhagina dhaabanii immoo fakkiin dubbatame kun waan dubbatu kun afaan oromoo dhaloonni dabarsan darban
What she's saying is Christ has opened his mouth by parable. Since he started speaking by parable, he never used another method.
Yes, sure.
Until today.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And she said he spoke to the disciples by parable,
Yeah.
and that parable applies to them. He spoke to the Millerites with parable, and the parable applies to them. And he is speaking to our generation with parable, and it applies to us.
No, but where do we see that in the book, in that parable? I just want you to give what that gives that implication. So which verse will give you that implication? Because that's now an application, which I agree with.
The application is one that I'm going to tell you to Satana, you know, legal girls, I can't apply, go through, can Gargari, the course verse 34. Sorry? 34.
But that, alright, okay. It's okay. So now, let's summarize what we are doing. So what we are doing is we are focusing on these verses. So we've gone to the book of Matthew chapter 29 through 31. And we defined the signs that are given in relation to the end of the world, this history. So we have that boardwork on the other side. Now there are other symbols that we need to define. So how we have been defining symbols is by comparing different parables. So we already have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We already have like 5 parables. So when we are coming to verse 32, we came there in an attempt to add another parables that will open us the light in relation to this history. So the question we are trying to solve, we've agreed that when we come to verse 32, it's repeating and enlarging the previous parable. But the previous parable has 4 sections. As you can see, the first which is the disciples, the second the great tribulation, the third the end of the world, all the whole history. So this whole history will give us the history of the Christian church. So now the key to open up, the key to help us understand this is understanding which part is Christ repeating and enlarging when it comes to verse 32?
lakkoofsa 32 gaafa dubbisnu Kiristoos kan inni irra deebi'ee bal'isaa jiru kutaa isa kamidhaa kan jedhu.
So depending on the part that is repeating and enlarging,
kutaa inni irra deebi'ee ibsaa jiru sana irratti.
so we'll just take the verses that speaks to the end of the world. We'll take the verses that speaks to the end of the world. And we'll superimpose them what we already have on the back of the board. So I don't know what we have agreed on. But basically what I'm going to do is we are going to come tomorrow and see the repeat and enlarge that Christ is doing. And we'll use that to construct the line that we had started. So we'll do that in our next lesson. So we can still be like researching on what we think. Is that okay? Alright, so we end.